morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's weekly energy boost. My name is Elisheva, and I'm here this lovely Monday morning with David, and we are so excited to talk about ancestral spirituality, or whatever that means. We're going to figure that out as we go along. The focus of today's show, and the truth is this entire month, we are focusing on all things family. The reason for that is that we are in the lovely Kabbalistic month of Scorpio, and everybody's desire to control the people and things around them is super heightened. I don't know if you've been feeling it. Everybody is dramatic. What else? Hysterical. It's the end of the world for everybody that we know in their own unique way. And part of what ends up creating, I think, a big part of what makes us who we are is our family. And a big part of the drama that we experience in our life comes from family. So this month we are dedicating to understanding family. Last week we had the episode focused generally on what family is about. Today we are going to talk more about handling our family, how to navigate those relationships because they are difficult, looking at what we can learn from them more specifically. Hopefully we'll have some real life examples of how, not us of course, but people we know have navigated difficult situations with family members. But really understanding that I think the biggest takeaway for me last week was if our purpose is to reveal our potential, maximize our potential, we choose our family so that they can help us do that. They can help us install those buttons that are not there to be pushed, but are there for us to uninstall. So that if my family installs a button that makes me, fearful or insecure every time they trigger that fear or insecurity, I'm not there to be fearful and insecure for the rest of my life. I am there to overcome that fearfulness or insecurity. So we're going to take last week and build upon it. I'm also excited to hear what David has to say about these things because he's always so controversial and likes to push my buttons as well, even though we're not related. But really to bring, I think, more than ever, to help people be more accepting and at peace and not needing to control everything. I don't know. Take it over before I
actually it slipped my mind that we're going to talk about this topic today, and yesterday I did something totally out of character for me. I had a family member who apparently her teenage girls listen to our Kabbalah 1, and they've been listening to it for months, right? On their way to school, I guess she puts it on. I think they're 12 and 14, and they're now in Kabbalah 3, and it's kind of changed their lives and inspired them. So she said, would you be willing to come to my house to do a little session with their friends? I'm like, you mean 12 and 13-year-olds? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, they want to learn this stuff? She's like, yeah, I can get like 10 to 15 people want to come. So I said, all right, totally out of character for me. This is like your jam. I know you're always with this demographic. I've never really taught exclusively this demographic. I know I have teenagers come to my adult classes, but never an exclusive class. But something pulled me to come, and I said, I need to do this. And I just want to say, don't like hit me up an email and say, can you teach my teen, or can we do a teen class? Like that's not like what we're doing. This is just something that just happened to happen and was really inspiring for me. So I'm sitting with them, and it's girls and boys, and I'm asking them, what's the thing that you deal with most now in your lives? Like, what's the most painful thing? And everyone pretty much agreed that
their parents.
Huh?
Their parents.
I was about to get to that. Actually, most of them had good family lives, or at least from what I felt in just the hour being there. But they all said that they all struggle with the fear. I said, like, what's your biggest fear? And what's the biggest pain point you have on a daily basis? And so everybody said that their fear of being left out, or their fear of being irrelevant is at the forefront of their lives. And a big thing is when they see friends not spending time with them on social media, like the whole lie of social media and what it causes for them, what it brings up for them. And each person kind of shared, ways that they've been hurt by other people. And this is leading to family. So, and this was a really profound moment, which is one of the girls would say, okay, I have this friend that she all of a sudden, she's opportunistic. Like all of a sudden, if there's someone more popular or more on the status side, she'll go spend time with them and not me, and I'm not invited. So we're talking about why is this happening? We're talking about the light of the creator. We're talking about Kabbalah. And I said, do you do this? Do you do this to anybody? That's like always the first go-to. When something painful happens to you, you kind of need to look at where you might be behaving the same way. That's always the first go-to. That's the low-hanging fruit of understanding cause and effect, is that the creator needs to show me what I need to cleanse. And the best way to do it is to have me be on the other end of it and experience the same type of pain. So she said, no, I'm not that way towards my friends. And I said, well, interestingly enough, do any of you ever treat your parents this way? And there was a kind of moment of, well, what are you talking about? So the way to look at it is I was asked how many of the teenagers kind of look at their parents in an opportunistic way, which is, I'll use you or need you when I need you. Otherwise, kind of get out of my way. I got a life to live. But if there's something there that I can receive from you, right? How many teenagers or 12-year-olds are walking into the house thinking, all right, my parents, how can I add value? How can I create circuitry?
How many 40-year-olds?
Well, then, so this is what I think what got them inspired. I said, look, you guys are in your early teens. Every adult tells me the same thing after they take Kabbalah 1. Right? What do they all say after class 3 or 4 when it makes an impact on them? I wish I learned this when I was young, when I was a teenager, because these are the rules to life. I said, look, you want to deal with your fears now? You want to deal with your fear of abandonment, your fear of being left alone, your understanding self-confidence, understanding certainty in a bigger force. Do you want to understand that now? Or do you want to wait until you're in your 30s, 40s, or 50s, and we're going to have that same conversation then? Because the same issues you have now, you're going to have as an adult. Just probably a little more encrusted, and it's going to be a little bit harder to change. So this is the dialogue we started to have, and I just felt it was so inspiring because it's not we treat our parents and we treat our siblings and we think family is a tikkun upon us, a correction upon us, like they bother us. Truth is, we probably treat our family members in ways that we don't like to be treated by our friends, our colleagues, and such. I thought that was just a profound thing that even for me, like it was like, wait a minute, I need to kind of look at the way I treat family and realize we take it for granted. We just think like family's always there. That's great. Let me now move on to focus on other parts of my life.
Well, but I think you bring up something really important. And I think for those of our listeners also who have been on a spiritual path for a long time, it almost seems like when I'm around my family, if they're not spiritual, I don't need to be spiritual, right? Like I can just let it all hang out. I, treat people the way without consciousness. I don't want to say unconsciously, but the tendency is to meet people where they're at, not in a good way, right? So, I have always had this philosophy, I don't know where it comes from, I don't know that it's necessarily spiritual even, that it's more important to me how my kids show up in the world than how they show up at home.
That it's more important for you how they show up in the world than
how they show up.
Okay.
Like if they feel they want, I'm okay with them not being their best selves at home.
Oh, interesting.
If outside of the home, they be their best selves.
Okay, that's interesting.
So I'm sort of not disagreeing, but showing a different angle to David, because on one hand, first of all, I want them to feel safe, to be able to let down their guards and take off the costume and be able to be themselves. Meaning, let's say, would you rather the opposite? Would you rather your kids are angels at home, and then when they leave the house, they just...
So you're saying your algorithm is they need to be I want to use negative, but they need to kind of, there's more leeway. There has to be some leeway. You're saying they can't show up in a beautiful way in and outside the house.
They can, but I want them to also feel if they're in their if being authentic, no, the opposite. If they are not feeling it right now, it's okay to not be a radiant beacon of light.
In the house.
In the house. It's not okay outside of the house.
I see.
Do you see what I'm saying? That you have to be proactive outside of the house.
So you're basically saying, as a parent, you lower your expectations a little bit in order to create a safe environment. So it depends on who we're talking to. If we're talking to the kids, the lesson is how you need to show up like according to the spiritual rules we're learning, both in the house and outside of the house. And when we talk about kids, we're talking about 20-year-old kids, 30-year-old kids, 40-year-old kids, 50-year-old kids, because we all have family. We all visit. We all go. We have holidays coming up. We all have corrections with our family. So a 30-year-old, how do they show up at their parents' house or at their family's house or at their siblings?
My point is, let's say you're a spiritual person and 5% of the time you can't be spiritual. Okay. You're grumpy, you're hungry, you're hangry. You just got a parking ticket. I don't know, all the good reasons to be reactive. You can be reactive on my couch. Okay. If you need that. Okay. My couch is a safe place, whether you're 3 or 30, to be reactive.
That's an interesting
You will not be judged. You will be hugged. You will have a cup of coffee or juice or whatever it is that you need while you're reactive. And then you will become proactive again, right? You have your moment of...
As long as that's understood.
Right. It's temporary. It's short.
Just know that you have a time limit. You have a timer.
There's actually something to that, by the way. There's a theory that you should time your negative reactions and then move on. But anyway, that's for another episode. My point is that it is natural to show your ugly to your family. Your meaning belonging to you, yes. Not that you are ugly, but to not be your perfect self, to not be your most elevated self around your family. And there is a time and a place for that. To David's point, you still have to treat your family the way you want to be treated.
That's correct.
So that we're saying we're not disagreeing. We're just showing different sides of the same coin.
On one hand, there's more leeway with family, especially if you're in Elisheva's house. On the other hand, you shouldn't use that as a reason to consistently not be spiritual around your family. Because you could say, well, they're going to love me no matter what.
Right. Just for those of you parents who are listening to what David's saying, what I'm saying is you don't want your kids to be fake and ingenuous with you.
Yep.
When they're upset, you want them to feel it's safe to be upset or angry or whatever. And then, but at the same time, you're also instilling them the mindset and the tools that let it out and get back to shining your beautiful diamond of a soul. Right?
Okay. And you were about to say something before I cut you off.
Well, you were saying a second ago, right? We're now coming to the holidays, at least in North America. And inevitably, if people are able to go home, they're going to go home, or they're going to upset their family by saying, I'm not coming home, or I'm going to be with my friends instead, or I'm going to be alone instead. So one of the things that I think is important to talk about is how do we stay our authentic spiritual selves when we're surrounded by not spiritual people, right? Do we meet them where they're at? Do we go into getting political and gossipy? I think the gossip is a big thing, because when family gets together, it's all about, did you hear what happened to who? And do you know who's getting a divorce? And do you know who just went bankrupt? And do you know this? And do you know,
So this is a tough one, because we tell our students, pick your environment, pick a good environment, pick the right environment. If you put yourself in a toxic environment, ultimately that's going to erode you. That's going to make you more of a reactive person. For those who listen to that advice, they see results, right? You start to choose better friends, better relationships. You think twice before you enter long-term relationships with people. You pick careers with better cultures. That all makes sense. It's just a matter of being strong enough to choose it. However, what we're saying now is with family, you're in a toxic situation. So it could be parents, siblings, cousins, step, whatever. By the divorced couples, right? You have a relationship. You can't, especially if you have children involved, there's still a relationship. And what you're saying is we can't just cut those the way we could maybe choose our career, right? Oh, this is an abusive culture. I resign and I move to a new one. I mean, it's that simple. However, with family, we can't just resign. We can't resign.
We can't give notice at home.
Yes. And probably everyone's thinking, all right, what do I do? It's a question we get all the time. And I'm going to answer this in a way that doesn't go into this. Here's my answer. Here's one answer. And then I want to hear what you have to say. I've learned that when it comes to family, it's less about what do I do, what do I not do, because you're kind of in a pickle a lot of times. You're in a situation where you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So what I've learned, this is a big secret that I want everybody to kind of see if it resonates with them. What I've learned when it comes to family, when it comes to spouses and kids and whoever, it's less about what you do. There is a what you do component, but what the universe and what the creator is teaching us is it's really just to break the ego. Because when you're in a situation where you don't know what to do, it's actually the most powerful moment of your life. Because when you don't know what to do, your ego, this sense of self, is completely nullified. At that moment of confusion equals the nullification of what we call the ego or the desire to receive for the self alone. All right, so what's so good about that? What's left is only the soul, which is the part of you that's connected to the creator, which is the part of miracles. So technically, whenever I'm confused, frustrated, or all out of hope, and I don't even have a clue what to do, that's the time that I'm most connected to the miraculous reality. I don't feel it at that moment. I don't see the results of that right away. But that's when you start to draw from that realm. In fact, we should have more education about the fact that when you're confused, broken, and hurt, you're actually drawing down the future miracles. But because people aren't conscious of that, and the opponent doesn't want us to be conscious of that, he's always kind of pushing us. He's pushing us to create more chaos during those times. But actually, that's when you're drawing miracles. So for me, if a child is just totally not listening, or if you're in a situation with parents, or if you're in a situation with a divorce where the other side is just unreasonable in every way, first, it's the creator just trying to break you. Break the way you go to the gym and you proactively break muscles so that you can have new muscles. And we pay somebody to break us when we go to the gym. The creator's like, look, don't try to solve this. Don't try to solve your family. Don't try to fix now thousands of years of past life issues that you have with whoever. Just break for a moment and allow the light in. In a job, you can resign. And when you resign, you don't really break. You move on, you transition, but you don't break. Breaking and allowing yourself to break is important. It's why the personal trainer doesn't care about the first 10 reps you do. It's the last 5 that he loves most, because the last 5 breaks you. What about the first 10? The first 10 sustains you, sustains the old muscle. Because if you didn't do anything, you would atrophy and die. So the first 10 sustains the muscle. The next 5 breaks the muscle. Family breaks. Everything else you can run away from. You know, when you're dating somebody and you don't really want to be around, you go home back to your safe space. You don't have to be with them. You don't have to talk to them. But when you're married, what's the safe space? What's the safe space? Now you got to break. You got to allow the light in. So that's my consciousness about this. Now back to you, Alicia.
So get out your popcorn.
You couldn't see the many faces Alicia was giving me as I was talking. I think I was playing Guess Who. You would have thought I was playing Guess Who.
Well, one of the things I love about spending Monday mornings with you is how diametrically opposed we are.
Yes.
And also saying the same thing.
That's right.
So I love this. So I would actually say the exact opposite.
Great.
But with the same intention.
Mm-hmm.
The shared intention being, I'm going home for the holidays, or I'm going to my aunt and uncle's house, or I'm going wherever I'm going, where I know that I'm going to be met with behavior I'm not proud of, people who rub me the wrong way, just uncomfortable situations of every size and shape. I also know that I know these people. Well, let's put that aside. Before we get to I know these people, my intention is to leave the gathering better than it would be without me. I'm going there to elevate myself, elevate others. That doesn't mean change others, but it means take whatever the vibe is usually and raise it. Mm-hmm. You can do this, by the way. You don't have to be going to your family to do this. You're going to a company event, you're going to a neighborhood gathering, you're going to a friend's house. Before you open the door, before you knock or ring the doorbell, you say to yourself, light, creator, universe, I want to elevate. Send me opportunities to elevate what's going on there, to inspire, to help create shifts, and then watch what unfolds. The challenge with going home to sort of a fixed scenario, let's say Thanksgiving always looks a certain way, or the holidays always look a certain way, feel a certain way, same cast of characters forever. And you sort of know, well, this uncle's going to talk about this, and my grandma's going to ask me why I'm not married yet, and my this, like it'll be the same as it's always been. How do you go into that without, first of all, being on the defense, already, preparing your canned answers, responses to the questions are going to ask? Then you have, the political conversations, or I find I talk to students all the time, and they're embarrassed about their family being racist or prejudiced in certain ways that are not progressive or up to date with the younger generation, things like that. How do you handle that? My answer is, like the fact that you know that that's what you're going into, you can preempt it, not with, I'm holier than the rest of you, I don't degrade myself by talking like that, but preempting it. So you have, let's say, the ability to pick the topic of conversation before it gets picked. You can say, has everybody seen Squid Game? Is that what it's called?
I heard about that today.
All I know is that my kids say I shouldn't watch it, my older kids. Have you, whatever happened to such and such actor or singer? You can preempt the massacre that you usually expect. You know that there's certain family members that maybe are quiet or hide, run to the couch when everybody's at the table just to avoid. Maybe go and sit with them, right? And by the way, I can tell you, we've been talking this month about Kabbalistic astrology also. Knowing your family's astrological signs is also going to help you meet them where they're at.
That's huge.
If you know that a certain relative, let's say your cousin is a Leo, and all they want to do is talk about themselves. Ask them how they're doing. Ask them what they've been up to. Let that be the annoying point of conversation rather than the negativity, the gossip, and all the other things that can happen. To me, it's not different from, preparing for a football game or something like that, or a business meeting where you need to strategize. You know what the response is going to be, so you strategize, and without attachment, by the way. Not, if your Leo cousin doesn't respond to the prompt to talk about himself, that doesn't mean you failed. But that's your intention is to elevate in general. So you're not failing. You're simply being redirected to elevate elsewhere. And it doesn't matter. This is really the important thing. When I say don't be attached, don't wait for your parents to be like, excellent performance tonight, David. Right? That's not why you're not going there to be applauded or praised for your saintliness. You're going there because you're being given an opportunity to elevate the room, to elevate the home, to elevate the gathering. And proof that you did it might never come, first of all, but it might also come 3 months later when your Leo cousin said, you seemed really, on fire at Thanksgiving. What have you been up to lately? How come you're so inspired these days? It comes in weird ways, in ways that you don't expect it, if it ever comes at all. So my point is, if you're going because you feel obligated you're already lowering the bar. Don't go because you're obligated. Don't go because if you don't, you're going to feel guilty or your parents are going to hold it against you or all the other things that might happen. Go because you have an opportunity to radiate in the room. And the same way that the sun doesn't turn off because you didn't put on a bikini and lay out to get a tan today, do not be attached to how the audience, right? If the audience receives you well, great. If it doesn't, also great. Because as David said, you have that moment where your ego is obliterated. That's what your family is for. And you succeeded either way. The measure of success is never in the audience.
It's interesting because we just did say the exact opposite thing, but the reason why they're very complementary is because we also learned this in Kabbalah 1, that there's person has two focuses in life. Your soul has two purposes. Purpose number 1 is your focus on your personal transformation, which is leading to what I said, which is the fact that being in a situation where you really don't know what to do many times breaks the ego and then opens you up to understanding more about yourself. Because whenever you're broken, you start to learn about yourself. You build self-confidence. And I talked about this many times. Self-confidence is when you're broken and you learn about yourself. Certainty is then when you have a relationship with the Creator. Confidence is when you have a relationship with yourself. Certainty is when you have a relationship with the Creator. Because ultimately, without a relationship with the Creator, you'll never really be able to grow. You'll always kind of go back to home base. You'll go back to your old level. So what I'm saying is the one thing that is our purpose in life, which is our personal transformation. The second aspect of our purpose in life is I can't just focus on my own cleansing all the time. We are all committed to living into a communal society where we need to give and take to each other in order to practice becoming like the Creator. And how we do that is number 2. Your second purpose in life is how you become like the light of the Creator unto others. So what Elisheva is saying is that how are you showing up in what we call the right column, in your desire to share? From your desire to receive point of view, we need to cleanse that, right? My desire to receive is attached to all my fears and my anxieties, and do I get this and do I get that, and what if I don't get it, and what if I... So that is what I said. What Elisheva is saying is, okay, now that you've focused on yourself and you becoming a better person, how is that going to translate to your family? And what I loved about what you said is I've learned that ultimately, if you are doing the work, and we call it the work. What is the work? The work of constantly checking in with yourself, constantly auditing, constantly taking responsibility, constantly overcoming sadness, constantly overcoming laziness, and finding always the perfect balance. Not overgiving, not undergiving. And it's all the stuff we learn in Kabbalah. If you do that work, everywhere you go, you will be a shining light, and people will feel that energy, and they will be inspired. And it's not going to happen in the way you want it and the time you want it, but showing up to wherever you're about to go because a lot of times we go to things already with a bad mood and all this like judgment and it's going to be like this.
Here
and it's going to be like,
again.
yeah, it's going to be like this, it's going to be like that. I got to deal with this personality and whatever. And the truth is all of that it's just negative. It's garbage. It's like, how much do we allow people to hijack our consciousness and suck our energy? We got to always refresh that. We don't even realize it until somebody tells us that we've been hijacked. So you've been told. We've all been told right now. We are being hijacked by these thoughts and this negativity, and it just doesn't serve us. So hit the refresh button when you see family, when you talk to family every day. Pretend like it's brand new, and then you walk in as a giver. Sometimes being a giver means setting boundaries. Sometimes being a giver means leave early. People hang out. People hang around too much. That's what I noticed. All the problems, no problems happen in the beginning, by the way. All the problems in every family event you have usually happens from the moment you were meant to leave on. There's always something, it's like, because then people get into the energy sucking mode. And then the nitpicky mode, the petty mode. There's always a petty mode, nitpicky mode that always happens towards the end of anything. So you got to kind of also know how to gauge your time and have some self-respect for the way you give out your energy.
I'm reminded of I think a few months ago, David went to someone's house, some gathering. I don't even remember all the details. And you said that there was somebody that was asking you about Kabbalah.
Uh-huh.
And you were like, no, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about you. And you kept sort of deflecting.
Yeah.
Like, let's not talk about it. Let's not talk about it. And I think that one of the things that happens when we go home, or where, you may even be.
By the way, that's how I was teaching them about Kabbalah. The fact that I've restricted talking about Kabbalah, you don't know how much Kabbalah they learned by the time I left. After they left, like, he didn't tell me anything about Kabbalah, but I feel like I want to study Kabbalah. Anyways, going back to what you said.
But this is my point.
Yeah.
I think that especially when we're excited about what we've been learning, what we've been doing, and it doesn't have to be Kabbalah, it could be anything. Our tendency is to want other people to do it, right? To, look at my skin cream, look at my Pilates instructor, look at my cable provider, right? You have to switch from Android to Apple. Like, we're all about, convincing people, canvassing. So the tendency also when you're in a group of people, I think, is to, your Leo cousin, you want your Leo cousin to say, what made you so awesome at dinner last week? You want to say it at the dinner table so that you have your opportunity to preach.
Yes.
Resist. As David said, resist. I think that the greatest incentive or greatest advertisement any of us could do for spirituality is to simply be spiritual. To really to restrict to be light in that moment. That is the most, first of all, educational, because you can talk to a person about something, but doing it or being it is a much more powerful way of learning. By the way, in education today, the whole paradigm has shifted because kids are now, or the focus is more on experiential teaching rather than lecturing. Don't talk about how a tomato plant grows. Go out and plant a tomato, right? Like, that's the shift. Here we're saying the same thing. In order for the people who you surround yourself with, and it may just be once a year that you surround yourself with them, or a few times a year, let's say, you really want them to know what you're doing, do it. Do it, because the high that you feel when you take a class, you listen to a podcast, your mind is blown. That's not where, as David was saying, the miracles come from. The miracles come from that moment where you think you're going to take out an AK-47 and out everybody, and you don't. That's where the magic happens.
Well, you said it's very powerful. Going back to restriction, I think we should give examples of restriction around family. Because if you want to know the only times in life where you were happy, involved something that you just let go. Happiness and letting go are Siamese twins. They're attached at the hip. Okay, so it's we think happiness comes from when I get something. Happiness, every time you felt like an internal joy and an internal confidence, it was because of something you actually let go. So it's actually very powerful. Imagine you're going out with family, so as examples, or you're with family. Usually, whatever comes to our brain, we want to say. And it can be both the bad thing, like, say something critical. It comes to the brain, and we just say it because we feel comfortable. If we were in a setting with brand new people and strangers, like, there's a built-in restriction. We don't say things right away. But with family, we tend to say things right away. Or we tend to consciously suppress, which is another form of reactive behavior. It's a conscious decision to not say anything because I'm angry and I'm going to be in a state of judgment. So resistance means letting go of whatever my natural inclination is at that moment. So usually we want to say something. So for the people who are natural inclination is to say something, there's the critical say something and there's the positive say something. I'm guilty of this. I learn things that I feel like improve my life. It can be whatever. It can be like a juice I drink, or a place I go, or a show I watch. Right. And it always bothers me, and I think I'm guilty of this. When it comes to TV shows, like, everyone wants to, like, tell the other person, like, they got to watch this show. And so like if I like tell you, oh, you got to watch the show, and you don't even listen to what I'm saying, but then you start telling me about the show you saw that I should watch. Like there's no space to just digest, like receive what I just gave you for a moment, before you're just running into telling me about your show, which by the way, I appreciate. I want to know the show, right? But there's usually, everyone's so excited to share with the other person that sometimes sharing is allowing that person to talk, receive their suggestion, acknowledge their suggestion, give a lot of space before you make your suggestion. Like there should be like this awkward silence before then you say, that also reminds me of a show I saw that I think you would love. So it's all about restriction, letting go, listen, don't talk, and keep drawing it out. That's what I love drawing things out. I learned people love to talk. I want to hear. I want to learn, but draw it out. Don't just go in for the kill right away and give your opinion, your suggestion, the solution. People give solutions way too quickly.
I want to ride on that point, and I also want to make sure that we address dealing with our partner and our partner's family, because I think we made it seem like we're talking about our people.
In-laws, yes.
I want to talk to the parents and the grandparents and the aunts and uncles out there about restriction. Because I think we've also we've certainly spoken for the children.
Yes.
So far. And by the way, next week we're going to talk about raising children. So if you have any questions about that, we'll get to that next week. Parents, grandparents, matriarchs and patriarchs, whatever title you want to give yourself. One of the best, and I'll tell you not only from experience and watching my own family's experience in doing this, our misery, let's not say you, our misery comes from expectation. Let's be real. Our kids come home and we expect them to do X, Y, and Z, to treat us X, Y, and Z, to show up in a way. I'm super guilty of this. I don't want to turn this episode into a confessional, but this is definitely an area where I need to work as well. When I manage to do it, I experience the most joyous and happy family gatherings of my life. The devil is the expectation or the demand or the requirement or if they'll be nice to me, I'll be nice to them. If they don't bring anything with them, I'm going to be passive aggressive. If they don't sit next to me, if they don't ask me to go with them, right? We're so conditional. And the conditionality punishes one person, me. The kids don't care about the passive aggressiveness. The kids don't care that they may come to you later and say, hey, Mom, what's up? Or, hey, Grandma, what's up? Or, hey, cousin Leo, what's up? Okay, it can be a name and it can be an astrology
Leo
sign.
Cousins,
No,
Leo.
his name is Leo. You're missing the point.
His name is Leo.
Now his name is Leo. That it's really, let me be direct. Stop punishing yourself. You are the only one who's suffering. When you release, David was talking about the happiest moments in our life are letting go. When you let it go, you will receive so much more. You will experience so much more love and joy and connection with everyone around you, even more than you would have if your expectations were met. So going into whatever you're going into, you may also be going to your in-laws or your future in-laws or your potential in-laws or, places where you don't know a single soul at the table or in the room. Drop your expectations and do what David was saying before. Just listen. Ask people. If you don't know what to do, ask people about themselves. You will be the belle of the ball. If you just walk around, people will say, did you see that guy, David? What a great guy. I want him to come over again. He didn't say a word. All he did was ask questions. I should trademark it. Maybe that's the book I need to write. How to be the belle of the ball. You will be unforgettable if you just walk around the room asking questions. Why? Because you are not there for anything of the self. You're completely empowering the other people in the room to shine. and detaching from the receiving mode, which again, it's normal, it's natural. You walk into a room, you think, what can I get? How can I be comfortable? Who's going to make me feel good? Who's going to validate me? When can I talk about my promotion at work? When can I introduce my shiny new boyfriend? Right? We're always looking for the, how I can vacuum the energy in the room. Instead, focus on how you can reverse vacuum, how you can be a beacon of light. But I think that like you said before, it is in the letting go. It is in the restriction. That's where the happiness is.
Beautiful.
Do you want to talk at all about partners? I think that your partner, meaning romantic partner and not business partner, also business partner actually, falls into the environment you do choose. So it has different rules that govern it.
Yes. Oh, actually, yes. It says that until the moment you commit to that person, so you kind of enter a bond. Whether it's especially marriage, if we're going to use that word, it says that after you marry someone, then you're in it. It achieves family status, and the Creator has wanted you to be with this person, no matter what. To go through a process doesn't mean you don't leave.
No, but my point is, in the conversation about parents, siblings, let's say parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, that's a different conversation than you and your spouse.
Partly, yes. I do want to emphasize that before you commit to someone, it is very much your free will to choose the right partner. After you've committed to somebody,
you relinquish your free will.
You sort of relinquish that free will to just like opt in and out. It's not just like an opt in, right? You don't just opt out. There's a lot of spiritual work you have to do before you opt out without taking the baggage to a new relationship. So what I've learned is once you're married, it means that the Creator has wanted you to be with this person. Now you have something to work out, even if it's not working out well. Before there's a marriage, you totally have free will, and you have to make sure you choose the right partner. And if there are warning signs, you need to pause and kind of look into that deeper before you commit. All right, so that's just the difference. So it does kind of get an upgraded family status, and by family status we mean you can't just resign. I always encourage people who are just gung-ho about leaving committed relationships not to do so quickly. Not because maybe they are the right person and they're making a mistake, which could be true, but we don't want to let the baggage follow you into the new relationship, which none of us want that. So just make sure you fix whatever needs fixing. You deal with whatever needs to be dealt with. Whatever fears, whatever anxiety, whatever needs to be said is said, obviously in a proactive way, before you move on.
I don't know if you noticed this, for those of you that have been listening to us for a while, we basically say the same things over and over and over again. No, and I mean that in a positive way. David, I want you to just share for a few minutes about the class that you're starting tonight. But literally, this week we're talking about restriction. Last week we talked about everybody's a mirror. Next week we're going to talk about sharing. It's the same I would say same 10 fundamental concepts, repackaged, reconstituted, concentrated, diluted, and in different forms, because all of our challenges have the one of the same 10 possible solutions. And that's what you teach in Kabbalah 1.
Yes, that's a nice segue. Well, yes, I am starting Kabbalah 1 tonight. If you're listening to this on Monday, if you're listening to this live,
anytime this week, because they can always listen.
Yeah, you can always jump in this week. But also I'm hoping this is my last virtual class that I give, so anyone around the world can opt in, and even if you can't come live, you can hear the recordings. I think last time I gave this was about 6 months ago, so they're becoming far and few in between. But I would love in the new year to teach a live. I'm kind of flirting with the concept of the live Kabbalah 1 here in LA. That's not going to be helpful for obviously people listening to us around the world, but I know that we're kind of like right at that moment where the live classes can start happening again. But so that being said, most likely I'm hoping this will be my last virtual class that I give before we transition back to live. So anywhere you're around the world, if you want to join, it's going to be new. And if you've heard this class before, I always recommend hearing it again because it's new. The concepts are new. I always
The
try
wisdom is ancient. The packaging is new.
Yeah, I try to change the packaging and deliver it in forms that are fun, exciting, funny. So it's also an entertaining moment of your week. It's not just educational, obviously. And for those of you who've heard the class before, I actually design it for people who've already heard it in many ways. So usually half the class is brand new people, then half the class is people who have taken Kabbalah 1 before. So that'll be tonight at 4 p.m. PST. And it is a pay what you can model, which also is probably being phased out at some point. Was something that we instituted during the pandemic. So this will be our last pay what you can. So there should be no financial resistance for you to be able to enjoy this.
You heard it here first, folks. And also, by the way, another shameless plug, not pug. Also, we love pugs. Shameless plug. We have for our listeners this month a 20% discount on astrology readings, Kabbalistic astrology readings. You can find the link and the coupon code at weeklyenergyboost.com. We were talking last week about how valuable having a reading is to better understanding your family and your family dynamics, and we'll get into that as the weeks progress. Also, just know that that offer is good for the month of October only, so don't wait. And next week, we are going to be focusing more on kids, specifically how to have a spiritual household and raise spiritual children. And then our last episode in the series is going to be about using Kabbalistic astrology. We're going to have a Kabbalistic astrologer on the show to talk about breaking patterns in families from life through lifetimes, how we see those patterns, and how we can use Kabbalistic astrology to support ourselves in our own spiritual growth as well as our family. So stay tuned for that. Have a fabulous week, and we'll see you next time on the Weekly Energy Boost.